Hey guys, welcome to today's video. Today I'm going to talk a little bit more about meeting with a geneticist in maternal fetal medicine and talking more about Marfans syndrome. I wanted to make this video separate from other pregnancy updates because this one's not really pregnancy related, but I have had a lot of interest, and people who have commented on my Marfans syndrome video suggested that I got like another opinion, and so I wanted to go ahead and do just that. So I went and saw a geneticist in maternal fetal medicine since I'm pregnant about a couple days ago, and we were talking about Marfans syndrome, and we were going to go over some different things to see if I should possibly get some further testing or genetic testing to see if I do in fact have Marfans syndrome. And if you don't know what Marfans syndrome is, or you didn't see my first video about how I was diagnosed when I was probably in my teens, and then I had a second opinion saying that I didn't actually have Marfans syndrome, I'll have those videos linked below. I'm going to try and stay just on topic for this appointment for this video. So yes, so there we go. So I was diagnosed when I was a teen, and then I had a second opinion in my 20s and told that I don't have Marfans syndrome. So this appointment was to kind of just clarify, do I have it? Do I not? Why the heck was I diagnosed with it once? It's a very specific disease. So yeah, so basically we started out by, he had me do like a family tree, and he went like as far out as I could possibly remember. It's a little difficult because I don't actually know my biological dad, so that honestly leaves like half of the equation out. But we got a lot of information from my mom's side, and I did kind of go off of memory and pictures and what my mom has told me about my biological dad's side, about like physical traits, because that is a very big thing with Marfans syndrome. So we started out by doing that, and he kind of asked a lot of questions about like why was I diagnosed when I was younger, what were the traits that I had, and we kind of went over the different traits that I have now that fall under the Marfans syndrome tree. I don't know. And one of the big things is flexibility, and that's such a weird thing. Now, you can't just like be flexible and you have Marfans syndrome. There's a lot more that goes into it, but that was something that I was scoring really high at. And so he ended up having me do a bunch more tests while I was there in the office. He tests to see if you can have make your thumb go to your wrist like that. You have to see if you can like keep your knees locked standing up and bending over, put your hands flat on the floor. There's just a bunch of them, and basically he had me, he just tested me on 5, and apparently if you score 5 out of 5, then there is a chance that you might have another connective tissue disorder that's kind of closely related to Marfans syndrome, and I had 4 out of 5. And so kind of a trending topic here is that I keep having like just below the guideline to be diagnosed with something. So I had 4 out of 5, so he said, you know, you might have another connective tissue disorder, but probably not. And so that was what he kind of decided with the Marfans syndrome. He said that after looking over everything and asking me a ton of questions about my eyesight, my heart, I did just have an EKG and it came back normal. I had an echo and that came back normal. And typically if you have Marfans syndrome, you would have some type of a heart problem. I think specifically with your aorta, and an enlarged aorta, I believe, and I don't have that. So he said that of course I can go and do the genetic testing if I wanted, and that would just tell me right then and there if I have Marfans or not. It's a very expensive test, like in the thousands of dollars. So he said that by looking over everything and just by looking at me, a lot of times someone with Marfans has like a certain look, or one of the big things I think is like a sunken in chest. He said that he wouldn't think that I had Marfans syndrome other than the fact that I am 5'11" and pretty thin. And what else? He went over a few other things. There was a bunch of things that he went over to say that, you know, like he didn't think that I really needed to do the genetic testing unless I wanted to, especially since my heart was okay. And so That was when he got into like the flexibility tests, because he said maybe I have something that's like closely related to it. And yeah, so that was basically the gist of the appointment. Of course, it's not anything for sure because I was just talking to someone. He seemed very educated about Marfans syndrome. I think that, you know, I could very well have another connective tissue disorder or something that's kind of related to Marfans syndrome, but the only way that I'm going to know is either if I'm having a problem with something or if I go in to do a bunch of testing. And I'm not having like issues with anything really. And the other thing he mentioned is that I'm 34 years old, and he said he's almost never met a 34-year-old that didn't have some kind of a heart issue or like an eye issue by the time they were 34. He says like almost unheard of. Did I already say that? I might have. And so he felt like that was like a really big thing to go by. And since I have done all of these tests at once, and especially during when I got my second opinion, I did a bunch of testing. I can't remember, I think it was like eye test, heart test, things like that. So I felt really good about that information. I know that in my very first Marfans syndrome video, a bunch of people said that I should really look into this and be very careful about it if I was once diagnosed with Marfans syndrome. A lot of people told me their stories, and it was really great to hear that. And honestly, that's one thing that kind of pushed me to go to this appointment and talk to another person. But I do feel really trusting of the doctor, and I feel confident that I don't need to do the genetic testing. As far as I know, I don't have anyone in my family that has Marfans syndrome. Again, I don't know my biological father, so I mean, I could have, but from what my mom remembers of the family and knows, it doesn't seem like anyone had that. So yeah, I'm sure some people might think that's like taking a gamble, because Marfans syndrome can be extremely dangerous during pregnancy if you have Marfans syndrome. But like I said, my heart is totally fine and normal, so I feel fine and I feel good about this. And if you guys do have any more information that you want to share with me or any stories, feel free to leave those down below. And I think that's all. So I felt like the appointment went good, and I don't really need to check back in with anyone else about Marfans syndrome. We can just basically say that I do not have it. I was just wrongly diagnosed because they really didn't know much back then. So there we go, guys. I hope that was interesting, and I will talk to you guys later. Bye!